Hello and welcome to On to the Next Thing. I'm your host, Michael, and today I don't have a guest, but I do have some interesting topics. I'm going to elaborate a little more on my dislike of Gordon Ramsay and how he compares to fellow loud antagonistic food critic Jon Taffer. But before that, we got to get into some bird news. And because this is coming out a little bit later than I expected, as usual, got two headlines for you today. Both of these are, a little bit distressing. Not gory or anything, but a little bit distressing if you're a bird fan like myself. So viewer discretion is advised. So we got first headline. We got Littleton tenants feel trapped by recurring bird infestation nightmare. All right, let's get into this. Who is it by? It was by author Ria Jha. And so this is from Littleton, Colorado. Tenants of the Mountain Gate Apartments in Littleton say a persistent bird infestation has made their homes unlivable for yet another spring, citing concerns about health, safety, and unfulfilled promises from the property management company. According to residents, hundreds of swallows return to each nest. What the hell? According to residents, hundreds of swallows return to nest each year on Building 8, leaving behind droppings, dead birds, and bird mites that tenants say are getting into their apartments through windows and cracks in the walls. Lovely. It's a living nightmare, said former tenant Ben Timmer. There's bird poop everywhere. You didn't sleep very much. All right. I don't know what... I don't really know how those two statements are related. There's bird poop everywhere. We didn't sleep very much. I'd assume the birds are loud and also there is bird poop, but, it's also possible that the birds shit really loud or that the smell keeps you up. So probably, if I were to reach out to anyone here, I'd probably reach out to former tenant witness Ben Timmer and ask him to clarify a little bit. Oh, here's some clarification right here. Timmer, who lived in the building in 2023, said the problem was so severe that he and his partner taped up their windows and eventually moved out. And it's like, once again, I don't know, are the birds trying to get inside? Is he taping it up because the birds are projectile shitting into his apartment? Don't know. Not quite clear yet. That's what pushed us out, the bird mites. Oh, okay, it's the mites. The bird mites coming out of the nest, he said. Tenants say they've repeatedly contacted Greystar, the national property management company that owns Mountain Gate, about the issue. Emails obtained by 9 News show that Greystar acknowledged the problem last year and indicated to tenants it would be addressed. They said they were going to try and do something to make it not such a nuisance, Timmer said, but as you can tell, nothing really got taken care of. What do you mean as you can tell? You don't live there anymore, Timmer. You don't know shit, alright? Why don't you go back there and investigate, just as I will. Taking a flight to Colorado tomorrow. Photos and videos taken by residents show mud nests clinging to the exterior of the building, piles of droppings on the windows and balconies, and even a dead baby bird covered in a pile of bird poop on the ledge of Timmer's balcony. See? Told you, it's a little bit fucked. Timmer estimated that at least 25 nests were visible outside his window. Here's a caption of one of the swallows, I guess, because I believe it's swallows. There's a caption. Birds may be a sign of spring, but for some people living in Littleton, the bird's annual return is more nightmare than nature. Thank you, Ria. Thank you for that literary genius. Greystar told 9 News it is aware of the problem, but it said its options are limited due to federal wildlife protection laws. Quote, the birds nesting on the property are a species of swallow protected under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act of 1918, the company said in a statement. We're taking all appropriate steps to deter nesting activity and maintain cleanliness in shared areas without disturbing any active nests, in full compliance with federal law. The company added it is working closely with licensed wildlife professionals to develop humane, long-term solutions that protect both the birds and the quality of life for our residents. Colorado Parks and Wildlife, CPW, confirmed to 9 News that the birds are likely barn or cliff swallows, both protected species. CPW said the birds are drawn to water sources like the nearby Platte River and ponds and often return. Platte River? I think I read it. I drove past the Platte River in a wagon while playing Oregon Trail. It's probably the same one too, because this is Colorado. It's a little aside. Platte River and ponds and often return to the same nesting sites year after year they deem safe and habitable. According to CPW, property owners cannot remove nests once eggs have been laid, but they are permitted to take proactive steps beforehand, such as installing barriers or applying for a federal removal permit. CPW says it receives many calls about swallows this time of year and emphasizes that prevention must occur before nesting begins. And I'd say that's exactly what they've been asking for, and it hasn't happened. Greystar property managers, in brackets, come and remove the nest at the end of the year and power spray like they do every year, but the birds come back. They're always back, Timmer said. Some residents also believe the conditions violate Colorado's warranty of habitability, a state law that requires landlords to resolve health and safety hazards in a timely manner. It's 100% a health hazard, especially with the AC units being right below everything, Timmer said, pointing to bird droppings inside the AC unit. As the birds return again this year, tenants say little has changed. Put up some wire, do something, Timmer said. There's people that call this their home. Well, I tell you what, someone's a little bit sad on both ends there, because obviously bird mites are fucking nasty, and I wouldn't want shit all down the siding of my apartment, which is what happens to my car every single year when I park it outside under trees, because garages are a little bit extra nowadays. So yeah, I definitely have sympathy for the tenants and the landlords. Of course, of course this is the time when the landlords are gonna go really deep into their fucking migratory bird regulation research and be, oh yes, the Migratory Bird Treaty Act of 1918 actually prohibits us from doing this, and this, and this. But yeah, honestly, you can generally speaking just put up nets. Nets are humane. Fish and Wildlife does that all the time. So it's like, it probably wouldn't be that hard to have real preventative measures, but I'm sure they don't want to take the time or spend the money to get a permit for it, or get like professionals to come in and do their thing. So yeah, just a tough situation. That one actually took a little bit of a long time, but I got a good one. It's also a little bit weird, but it's cool. This is a New York Post exclusive, so it's gonna be fucking riveting. Metro exclusive. Mystery Pigeon Lady is snatching sickly birds at NYC Museum, leaving locals on edge. Quote, some die. This is by Nicole Rosenthal. A mystery pigeon lady is snatching, quote, weak birds from outside the Met and storing them for days at a time inside her car, leaving neighbors disturbed over the strange behavior. The bird napper, who routinely is seen with a knife and bags of bread, admitted to the Post that she traps up to a dozen street pigeons outside the Metropolitan Museum of Art on Fifth Avenue to protect them from threats like hawks and loose rat poison. Today I have 3 of them, said the trapper and bookseller, who said her name is Grace. One is really very weak, she said Wednesday afternoon of the trio apparently flying around in the messy green Subaru Outback that she lives out of. Oh, fuck. This is sad. This is the New York Post finding and investigating a homeless person, and there's here's a photo of her with a caption. Apparently she has like a whole stand out there. That's crazy. A mystery pigeon lady outside the Metropolitan Museum of Art openly nabs, quote, weak birds from Fifth Avenue and stores them for days at a time inside her car, the Post has learned. Quote, some die, but not everyone, she shrugged as she unsettlingly held a large knife to cut bread for the flock, and added she often lets birds go after 2 to 3 days because they need sunshine too. Grace has continued to operate unobstructed despite numerous 311 calls from locals as activists worried the weird behavior could kill the birds or spread disease. She's been doing this for at least 5 years and has been known to yell at children and clash with passerby from time to time, a Met groundskeeper said. Fucking so many ads in New York Post. Awful. Lifting pigeons off a public street is illegal in the Big Apple and is considered animal abuse, according to the city's website. They're easy to take, she told the Post. They are slow. I take the weak, not the pigeons that fly in the winter. It was very cold and snowy. I had 10. Pigeons eating bread tossed by a bird feeder, Pigeons eating bread tossed by bird feeder Grace outside the Metropolitan Museum of Art on the Upper East Side. And it's just a stock photo of pigeons. So who knows if that's it. Oh, I guess that picture was taken by Nicole Rosenthal at the scene. So that's just a day in the life of a New York Post reporter. Megan Walton, who runs the Dutchess County-based avian sanctuary Pigeons for Miles, said the birds' feces could spread diseases while breathing in pigeon dust. Could cause lung damage in people. Pigeon dust? So I guess that means just like desiccated shit that's turned to dust over time. It's pigeon dust. I don't know if that's a scientific term. Quote, pigeons are not a vector species for bird flu, but it could be something that she's spreading. It's very concerning, Walton added. Walton said that she had filed multiple 311 complaints reporting the pigeon nabbing to the NYPD this week, but each case has been closed within hours or minutes of being created. Quote, it's animals' lives that are at stake. Yeah. Police said they responded to several complaints Tuesday and Wednesday, but, quote, observed no evidence of the violation. So that's classic NYPD bullshit. They're kind of they've been doing like a soft strike for the past like 5 years. So if you're putting in calls about birds, they are not. There is no way. Like nothing below like robbing a bank or like assault and battery. Like someone in Manhattan is going to get them out there. Like there's no way they're going to further investigate this unhoused woman living out of her Subaru kidnapping birds. Yeah, just ain't no way. We are aware of complaints involving this individual, and the Animal Cruelty Investigation Squad is looking into this matter, a spokesperson said. Additionally, the 19th Precinct will conduct directed patrols in the vicinity of the 5th Avenue and 80th Street, in addition to monitoring 311 911 calls for any incidents involving pigeons. But the most pressing worry for by the way, no way they're going to do that. Zero chance. But the most pressing worry for animal activists remains the safety of the birds, with one critic saying the weird behavior is more common than many think. They'll die fast in the heat and slow without medical attention either way, said John D. Leonardo, executive director of Humane Long Island. The pigeon napping outside of the Met was thrust into the spotlight on Monday evening when a passerby claimed the birds fed by Grace would, quote, turn into these barely moving wrecks just standing there and not reacting to anything. That's horrible. She'd walk over, grab them, and put them under her jacket or into a bag. I saw her even take one out of her bag and pour something into its beak, the user wrote in a now deleted post. What really struck me was how routine and normal this all seemed. There were workers nearby fixing something, people walking by, and no one seemed to pay any attention. Grace, a Polish citizen who arrived in New York roughly a decade ago. Oh shit, so they do know something about her. Alright, so she arrived in Poland to New York about a decade ago. Denied feeding the birds anything besides bread and water, but even the water feeding may be dangerous, Walton said. That's how you kill pigeons, Walton noted, because they aspirate liquid if it's placed into their mouths. Okay, that's good to know, in case I ever try and bottle feed a pigeon. Legit. Grace should turn over any seized animals to a sanctuary or rehabilitation center, she said. If she's harming animals, Walton said, somebody has to step in. Okay. So, yeah, I don't know. Once again, a lot of these stories, and any time, I've been doing bird news for a little while now. And, you know, obviously, outlets like the New York Post and, like, Local 9 News in Colorado aren't exactly, they aren't going to be putting a ton of time and effort into getting all the facts for these bird stories. But this one really, I don't know. It's something about it rubs me the wrong way, because it's bizarre that this woman can catch pigeons. I guess the sick ones, the ones that are slow and sick, she just snatches them up. I don't know. It's probably because that they're chill because she's feeding them. And so it's like the ones that are kind of slow and they're just kind of like, whatever, getting fed or, something like that. But that's bizarre if she's keeping them in her car. Like, I don't know. I don't know if anyone in the audience has worked around birds before, but they smell horrible. And it's really nasty. Like, this is a bizarre story. I probably should have read it beforehand because I was kind of taken aback at how weird this is and sort of like exploitative, but also kind of slow news day, because it's obviously a mentally ill, unhoused woman who I also just imitated in a voice that is definitely not her own, but could have been, actually. I'm glad I didn't do a Polish accent. Yeah, they said she was Polish right at the end. So I guess they did. I guess they interviewed her maybe, or maybe they heard from someone else. Anyway, I'm just imagining this like junior reporter Nicole Rosenthal at New York Post going around having to go and take pictures of pigeons, perhaps even interviewing Grace out of her green Subaru Outback, and then having to go around and interview bystanders about this woman who's snatching birds. But yeah, once again, it's kind of another case of police corruption as well. There's no way that they're gonna go looking into this, look into this bird napping case. And you might say, like, hey, that's not really what corruption is. That's just kind of like a dereliction of duty and police throwing a tantrum about like policy or whatever. And I say no. There's no proof of this yet, but there's always a possibility. Dirty cops are a major problem, and I say that bird crime probably makes up a higher percentage of corrupt cop operations than we might think. We don't know what Grace is really doing with those birds. Just some food for thought. Anyway, let's go to. All right. Well, you know what? We can do a couple media recommendations first. Probably I've been watching a lot of stuff. Been watching Samurai Jack bit by bit, episode by episode over the course of weeks at a time. Because it's not like at times it gets a little bit repetitive. It's not a show that I could like, or it's not a show that I felt like binging after like the first 10 episodes or something like that, because a lot of it gets repetitive, and even though the animation and the story gets more complex over time, it really does, it kind of does come down to the same cycle over and over again. I heard that season 5, or the final season, has kind of a resolution to it, so I am looking forward to that. But right now I'm in the depths of season 3, and not seeing the light in the end of the tunnel yet. So I'm gonna keep picking away at that. But it's overall, it's a pretty good show. It's fun for a little, during dinner or after dinner watch, especially if you're nostalgic for that era of animation. What else? Oh, I finally watched a film that I've been meaning to watch for a long time. I finally watched Kung Fu Hustle, which is a 2004 Hong Kong martial arts film. Directed by... It's a martial arts film directed by and written by Stephen Chow. And it's essentially about these two kind of like slacker thieves in an unspecified time of turmoil in Chinese history. And in order to try and get some clout and make some money, they impersonate members of the local axe gang, which I read up on, and apparently Axe Gang is kind of a callback to a gang of the early 1900s that was in Hong Kong, but then kind of just became a recurring villain in a lot of Hong Kong martial arts flicks. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing to find out afterwards. Anyway, these two losers, they try and pretend to be Axe Gang members, and in the process get the Axe Gang called onto this little slum that happens to ends up housing several martial arts masters. And so the main plot of the movie is the ensuing battles between the Axe Gang and the martial arts masters in the slum, and the change in heart of these two kind of scumbag thieves, and kind of trying to determine who they really are as people. And it's an action comedy, and there were definitely moments that I found very funny, even though I watched the version in Chinese with subtitles. But more often than not, with international films, I usually find it better to try and just watch the film with subtitles and then have the original audio, because it's usually just a more natural feel. even though if you have to do some reading. Some people hate reading during movies, and to that I say, like, I don't know, fucking suck it or whatever, stay stupid. But like, but uh yeah, but honestly, whenever it has the original audio and it's not like dubbed over with American or like bilingual actors who don't really get the feel right. I just prefer hearing the actor's original audio, because you get kind of a better sense of the timing for jokes, and the subtitles can tend to give off kind of a better meaning, and you can hear the tone in their voice when they're saying stuff, and so it gives a better. I think it's a better experience as long as you're able to kind of keep up with reading the dialogue as it goes, because it just sounds a lot more natural and more and kind of fuller. I don't know how else to describe it. Just make better experience to me. So yeah, I watched it even with the subtitles. Very funny. A lot of kind of slapstick, almost in the Looney Tunes style, as well. In addition to some pretty kick-ass martial arts scenes. But yeah, it's a very fun movie. I had a blast watching it. It's a lot of throwbacks to older martial arts films, which and even older other films. Like there was a reference to The Shining in it that was pretty funny. It was all played for laughs, but yeah, it's kind of made me want to go back and start watching all those a bunch of the martial arts flicks from the 70s and the 70s to the 80s. I heard that's kind of the golden age for it, with Jackie Chan and earlier on like Bruce Lee and those guys. So yeah, that's definitely those types of movies are definitely going to be on my watch list in the future. But Kung Fu Hustle had been on my watch list for a little while just because I heard it was a lot of fun, and it certainly lived up to the expectations. So that's a highly recommend for me. And as far as books go, actually, books I wanted to save for a little later because I wanted to talk a little bit more in depth about this one book that I've been reading. So as far as music, let's see, I started listening to some Run the Jewels again. That's the hip hop duo that's consists of Killer Mike and LP, and I kind of stopped listening to them for a while because they're a little bit they're definitely a little bit different than what a lot of rap music is. It's all like very tense and kind of like experimental stuff, which makes sense for the messages that they're trying to put out, which is kind of like, I'd almost describe it as just like revolution through crime almost, which is I don't know, it's very interesting. There's a lot of commentary, and some of the songs are kind of more humorous than others, but overall I like their lyricism, and I like their beats, their delivery, for the most part. At least a lot of their more popular songs are very good. Some other stuff I've kind of like and it's not something that necessarily fits that well into other hip hop that I've been listening to, as I tend to like kind of stuff that's a little bit more chill, for the most part. And then it doesn't quite fit. It's kind of a little bit more like industrial at times too, and I don't listen to a lot of industrial, so it's yeah, it's kind of interesting. It fits kind of a weird little niche in my musical taste, but I still like their stuff. I've also been listening to a lot of Mount Joy, and then at least one song by Lord Huron. But Mount Joy, I mean, I know they've been around for a long time, but I didn't realize how many good songs they had until recently. I've been listening to some of their new stuff, more. And yeah, and I've listened to some of their other catalog that I can't think of right now, and yeah, overall this is very solid, kind of alternative, folksy rock type of thing. They do kind of like, in between genres a little bit. They're not exactly like all acoustic folk rock, or like, they're not particularly weird alternative, but they're good. They're like a good rock band. that I hadn't really taken too much notice of until recently. So yeah, definitely recommend. I guess last but not least, it's got books, and I actually, between last recording and this one, I had finished up Lagoon, and I started on and finished The God of Endings, which is by man, once again, research going terrible. Oh, yes. The God of Endings, which is a debut novel by Jacqueline. I'll go with Jacqueline Holland. Jacqueline Holland. And so it's her debut novel, and it's about essentially a depressed preschool teacher who happens to be an immortal vampire, and it's very much a story, not super like it's not like a very violent, bloody vampire fiction, although there is definitely blood and definitely violence in it. But it doesn't dwell too much on that aspect of being a vampire, because the main protagonist is very much a reluctant vampire, who is basically turned by her vampire step grandfather after her family died from scarlet fever, I believe, or something similar to that. Some old timey disease in the 1840s in New York, and so she basically her whole family dies, and her and so basically she had been kind of ready to die, but her step grandfather didn't know this, because her father had sent a letter out to them as their only other relatives to basically just come in and take care of the kids. She was the only one left, and by the time that her grandfather rolled in, she was too sick to really tell him what she wanted. She was basically being exorcised by the priest, because this is a time when it's actually kind of a real hysteria around. Basically, it was tuberculosis. Actually, it was a outbreak of tuberculosis. I remember, because at the time, tuberculosis in a lot of mythologies of Eastern and Central Europe, tuberculosis was a sign of basically that your family's being haunted by like a vampire, essentially. So like one of your family members turned, and basically just every night they would wake up and get everyone else sick, and kind of drain them of their life force or whatever. Even though this is just how tuberculosis worked, but in rural New York, this in the 1840s, there wasn't a lot of science about disease vectors. And so this is kind of so this is set in kind of a real thing that happened, except in this case an actual vampire showed up and took custody of her, and then kind of made her immortal without her knowing what was happening, and so kind of against her will. And so she, and so basically the rest of the book, it kind of switches back and forth between her in the past and just describing things in her past that happened to her as she traveled across Europe for a while, and met various heroes and villains along the way, so to speak. And then the present, where she's a school teacher in the manor that was owned by her grandfather and had been kind of converted to a private preschool in his will, so she could come back over and work there as a teacher, since she really enjoys basically teaching children and art. But things start to get kind of hairy in the present, because she starts to get basically become hungrier for blood than she's used to. And so the main drama in the present is her trying to keep her cravings in check and trying to keep her increasingly erratic behavior under control, while still dealing with the basically the mental, the depression that she has from, not wanting to be in a world that's cruel, but being unable to leave it in any way that's in any way that's permanent. And so yeah, overall, not to spoil too much, I think it was a very solid book, very well written. Even though there wasn't a ton, it didn't exactly focus on like vampire action and as much horror, because it's basically from the sympathetic perspective of the what would have been the object of the horror, but in the end she's unfortunately a very empathetic person, who's been kind of trapped in this immortal form that she can't get out of, where she basically has to at least hurt things a little bit to survive. She doesn't have to drain things of blood every time, and she can kind of set up ways of just like feeding off of like animals and stuff. But this gets more difficult the hungrier she gets, and in the circumstances described in her past. And but yeah, it's kind of a lot of the book is just kind of her struggling with the fact that the people she loves eventually fade away and die, and that she doesn't really want to keep on living, but she also doesn't really she doesn't have a good way out, because apparently she's immortal, and any wounds she takes she'll like heal back after a certain amount of time. She can't really get sick or overdose on drugs probably. Although one of the issues that I had with this book, just kind of logically, because I do tend to get a little bit nitpicky with the plot, especially in books that kind of tend to dwell more on like character development and things like that. They can get a little bit diluted on the plot. And my main issue is that I don't like, with all the time that she's been on the planet, it's set the present day in the book is 1985. And so she's been alive or undead, I guess, for about 140 years or something like that. And in 140 years, she hasn't, and after only the briefest instruction from her grandfather about kind of like what she is and her limitations and things like that, she doesn't ever try and she doesn't ever really try and test anything to try and like either make her situation better, or to like actually end her own life, or to try and like really stop herself from being a vampire in any way. She just kind of like, throughout the narration, it's like, and it's somewhat realistic, is if like, people when they're traumatized, and especially when they get traumatized over and over again, by having to go through nasty ass Victorian era America and Europe, where tons of people are dying from like many causes every day, and all sorts of horrors are visited upon the poor and the vulnerable. And it's like, obviously that's going to be traumatizing, but I didn't find it quite believable that this obviously intelligent character isn't going to try and like, use a little scientific method, figure out like, okay, well, if I can sleep, then how long can I make myself unconscious to make this a little bit more bearable? Like, I mean, half of vampires in like folklore and fiction, or most vampires in folklore and even in modern fiction, like half of what they do is sleep. Like they're asleep half the time, and that's theoretically how they go for hundreds and hundreds of years without going crazy and having to live every day as an experience. And so it's like, I guess part of it is that she doesn't really want to become like like an animalistic beast that lives in a cave and just gorges herself and then sleeps for 4 days or whatever. But she doesn't try anything. I hate to say this about a character that's depressed, but she doesn't try to kill herself in any meaningful way, even though it doesn't seem like, from her perspective, she doesn't appear to believe in like a afterlife, or like a just God or anything like that. Although it's a little bit ambiguous about what her actual beliefs are. But she thinks she's immortal. Like, you think she would try and at least attempt like a let's say a shot to the head once. Over the course of her narration, she never is like she's never injured so bad where it's like, oh man, and she's coming back from this, then obviously she's immortal. Like, the worst she gets is she loses a foot at one point. She gets shot in the arm, and it really fucks up her arm for a while. But and she she doesn't get sick and stuff, and things like that. And she's like stronger than most people and can like kill things and stuff. All just vampire stuff. But it's like she never gets like grievously injured at any point. She doesn't try any of the things that are traditionally known to repel vampires. Sure, I wouldn't try and set myself on fire. Like, I wouldn't put it, if I were a vampire who didn't want to be a vampire anymore, I wouldn't try and like put a stake through my own heart and set myself on fire. But like, if you can, if you know that you can be unconscious, whether that's from like, going to sleep, or maybe even potentially even being sedated. Imagine if she had figured out that she could sedate herself, just hibernate through the winter or like through really tough times and shit. Instead, she keeps getting herself in these situations where it's like, oh no, I have to take care of all these children, and I'm a night creature that drinks blood, but I don't want to drink the blood of the children, so I have to make time to feed myself and hide the fact that I'm a vampire and can't eat real food, and then I have to do this and this and this. And it seems like a lot of the book, and part of this is probably intentional, is her kind of inability to like truly accept her situation for what it is. And only at kind of the end of the book does she sort of accept it in that way. And really the lesson in the book isn't like, well, you might as well, if you're a vampire, if you're a creature of the night, then you just dive into being evil and continuing on with what other people told you to do and what people expect of you. That's not really the theme. The theme is kind of more of like, it's kind of about like appreciating the life you have, and the good things that do happen in life, even though life is often full of suffering and things like that. And she does tend to, the protagonist tends to lament on the the suffering of the world and the suffering of herself, and the fact that she can't really do it, like even when she's tried to do stuff using her abilities of being immortal, like she can't really do anything about it, apparently. Like, apparently the machinations of the mortal world and evil mortal men are just too strong for an immortal being that has literally nothing but time to plan and calculate. And I don't know, it's just it's that part of it where it's just like, I mean, I'm sure that I would probably be devastated for a long time. I'd probably go crazy if that happened to me. But there's just like there's no attempt to really try and like even the mentality where it's just like, oh, it's all going to be suffering and it's just never going to end. And it's like, obviously, if you're in her case, her depression is not really letting her think positively about her situation at all. But she also literally has an infinity of second chances. Like, even if she's captured, like, let's say her worst fear is justified, and she gets like captured and put in a prison for a long time and has no access to blood and just slowly just like starves. And it's like, okay, well, either you're going to starve to death, which is kind of what you wanted. You don't want to be a vampire and hunger for blood anymore, and you want to be with the rest of your family in the afterlife, or just like together in nothingness or whatever. And then, but like, or it's like you'll eventually get out because you're going to literally outlast all the guards in all the prison, and you literally have an eternity, theoretically. We don't actually know. There's not a lot of scientific method among vampires, especially vampires like her grandfather, who are from like the freaking 800s or whatever and have been around for almost 1,000 years, and they're just like, oh, well, it's all just about war or whatever. It's like, obviously her grandfather wasn't the biggest intellectual in the world, but like, if she's smart, I feel like there's a lot of ways to kind of, you test your limitations, and you realize that if you're truly immortal, you have infinite second chances to build more relationships. Even though they end, it's like, lots of things end. That's the nature of things. The book is called The God of Endings. And so it's just like, even though I think the author kind of understands that because of sort of don't want to spoil it, but kind of the direction that the book eventually gets to and kind of the conclusion it gets to. I think the author understands that there's, that's the narrator's character development, that she's supposed to kind of like come to kind of appreciate the benefits and the downsides of, her situation. And it's like, maybe being able to actually, change things in some way in the future using what she has rather than trying to be like a vampire that's also like a nanny and is also just like a good person and just doesn't want to drink blood ever and things like that. And maybe eventually she'll I kind of lost my train of thought there. But the point is that it was a well-written story, and it didn't drag or anything. But it was a little bit tedious, the way that the character kind of thought about her predicament, and then apparently hadn't been able to do anything better than just be a preschool teacher again after 140 years of experience and living and learning how to survive and learning how things work. But it seemed like she had just kind of like no interest in trying to figure out the world and learning how it worked over the course of literally 100 years, like having an entire like extra, probably for her in the 1800s, probably an extra like 2 lifetimes worth of experience to try and figure things out. And it just didn't make a ton of logical sense to me that she wouldn't try anything to try and make her her situation and the situation of the people around her all that much better. But that's just me. I still recommend the book God of Endings by Jacqueline Collins. Collins? I hope it's Collins. I didn't screw it up, right? Jacqueline Holland, not Jacqueline Collins. But yeah, that's The God of Endings, a novel. Definitely recommended, but it's, at times the character, it's a little bit grating at times, but you still have a lot of sympathy for the character. It's a very, very fleshed out character. It's just frustrating because, the character's written very strongly in that way to be a little bit frustrating. Yeah. So that's good. What else do I got? Oh, right. Main topic of the day. I recently learned about Gordon Ramsay. No, I didn't just learn about Gordon Ramsay. I knew who that guy was. He's the guy who rubbed a lime on his ass during Hot Ones and went, ah, ah, ah. He's like wiping tears from his eyes and shit. His beady little British eyes. But yeah, he has a new show out right now. And it's called Gordon Ramsay's Secret Service, which is already a fucking insane name for a show that's once again just going to be him yelling at people about food. But one reason why it really caught my attention is because I think that it steals a lot of, it basically steals the same idea that the people behind Jon Taffer's Bar Rescue came up with, where it's basically just like, it's a reconnaissance, like setting up cameras and stuff to like recon, in this case it's a restaurant, not necessarily a bar. And it's like, it's recon, and Gordon Ramsay, like Jon Taffer, is sitting in a van or an SUV, I guess, watching what's supposedly a live feed, but it's reality TV, so it's probably just pre-recorded shit. But I mean, it could be a live feed of some kind. But yeah, he's watching that, and then when he sees stuff get out of hand, he comes out and he barges in and starts yelling at people. And that's literally exactly what the fuck happens in every Bar Rescue episode, especially the angrier ones where Jon Taffer gets really fired up in like season 2 and season 3 and shit. But yeah, it's I didn't expect this from Gordon Ramsay, because he's kind of like, he's one of the pioneers of the genre of angry, dramatic food reality TV, where it's just like, the chef that knows everything yells at a bunch of losers who don't know how to really cook and don't know how to do stuff, and maybe they learn how to do stuff. But yeah, surprising to see him kind of stoop so low to try and do like basically just the same shtick as bar rescue, except at a restaurant, not a bar, but essentially doing the same sort of reconnaissance that they do at bar rescue for the kitchens, because bar rescue does reconnaissance on the kitchens too. Like they see when the cooks are like not washing their hands and shit and not making stuff well, and they're also looking at the the service going around, like the waiter, the wait staff, and so it's basically, it seems like kind of the same fucking thing except for restaurants and not bars. And so I personally think that Jon Taffer needs to have a sit down with Gordon Ramsay, and they need to either hash this shit out verbally or in the motherfucking ring. Okay, right? Because here's my theory. I think I didn't actually look this up, but I think that Jon Taffer and Gordon Ramsay are about the same age. In a let's call it a celebrity boxing exposition match. Exhibition. Fuck me, I keep mixing up those two words. Exhibition. So it would be an exhibition match, right? They're not trying to be professional boxers here. But I think that there really only needs to be one show where a fucking jabbly old man screams at minimum wage workers about how bad they are at service and how bad they are at cooking food and like keeping their shitty kitchens clean. And so I think in order to hash that out, we need an exhibition match between Jon Taffer and Gordon Ramsay. Now, obviously, if they were just to go at this with no training, I would assume that Gordon Ramsay stomps because he's already fit and in shape and is like a chef and not just some fat fuck bar owner like Jon Taffer. But Jon Taffer has the street smarts and that Brooklyn meanness to him, where I think that if he actually trained and isn't already on a pacemaker and can actually get in shape a little bit, I think that with the right training and perhaps with the right drug regimen for both of them, they could probably get to the point where they could do like a let's say nothing crazy. Let's say like maybe 6 to 8 rounds boxing match, and the winner gets to have the one show where they fucking do surveillance on kitchens or whatever. Or maybe at the end, maybe if it's a draw, then they both gotta collaborate, and you get Jon Taffer. They do bars and restaurants, both, and instead of Jon Taffer hiring out his charismaless chefs that work at his shitty restaurants and bars that he owns, he can just collaborate with Gordon Ramsay, and so he just has a built-in co-host, chef / restaurant owner to go in and fucking kick ass and chop people up and do whatever. I'd say that that's honestly, you know what? That's even better than I thought. I really just wanted to see these two fucking weirdos fight it out, and with me, of course, throwing my support behind Jon Taffer because he's American and less annoying and doesn't talk about fucking snowflakes unironically. But I think honestly, if they had a show together, it'd be I don't even know what it would be called. What would it be called? The fish and shit? No, shit. I can't think of it right now. It would have to be something that combines freaking American cuisine and like British cuisine, or like something about American and British or something like that. Maybe they call it across the pond because maybe they travel back and forth. And sometimes they do a restaurant in England. Sometimes they do a restaurant in America. But honestly, that would be lame because Britain sucks and America has all the cool and interesting and weirdo restaurants. So yeah, it would probably have to still be in America. But yeah, after their boxing match, which I would still want to happen, they still need to have a boxing match. I do propose that they have a collaborative show where Jon Taffer can handle yelling at the bar people, and so it wouldn't be at like little shitty places like they do on Bar Rescue. It would be at big, bigger, either like big chains or like larger, larger, more important restaurants. Like maybe like they got to do each other's restaurants, each other's like Michelin star type places, and so then it kind of like heats up the rivalry a little more. So maybe they end up having a rematch in the ring. But honestly, the more I think about this, the more I think it's fucking awesome. And I literally need to write this idea down, because normally any idea I have on the podcast is just gone, fucked off, fucked right out of my brain. Not fucked right out of my brain, gone from my brain, disappeared, vanished, reduced to ashes. But yeah, but this one, I think this is gold. I think this could bring a lot of people together. Finally bridge that gap between British and Americans in a way they can still continue to hate each other. No, I think I would watch that. I would watch the hell out of that. I would watch highlights of it on YouTube for years to come. And these guys, they aren't getting any younger either. They need one more thing to spice things up before they retire. And if that means they gotta share the energy because they're both getting too old to scream at people, then so be it. Because I seeing those two personalities double up on a restaurant, or even better, like yelling at each other and like double crossing each other. Oh, it could be like Spy versus Spy. This would be insane. This is insane. I gotta contact a producer. I'm sorry. Yeah, I can't keep doing this podcast anymore. I need to make this idea happen. I gotta contact the nearest producer, or like anyone who works in television or something, because this has to go through. Fuck Gordon Ramsay's Secret Service. And Bar Rescue hasn't been good since season 3 anyway. They need to go head to head in the ring, and then they need to go head in hand or hand in hand into the restaurant to bust up the books and the whatever Gordon Ramsay says in Kitchen Nightmares, and yeah, make that fucking show. I literally can't think of a title for it, but it would have to be awesome. I'd have to get the consultants on that a little bit. But yeah, no, this is real. This is happening. We're gonna make it. But yeah, thank you for listening. This has been on to the next thing. Hopefully this one's gonna come out soon, and then I'll have another episode, maybe with a guest soon on after it. And make sure to keep following on YouTube and on the Instagram, and at OTNT podcast. It's pretty much the same handle on all social media, so that's Instagram, Blue Sky, and Mastodon. And stay tuned. Thank you, and good night.